Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Kof Non Gimel. Hahi matanta dahava katuba b'chayim u'bamavet. We have a deed of a gift that says in it that this gift of someone's total property was given in life and in death. So this is confusing language. Which one is it? It makes a big difference. See, if it says that this document was given while the person was on his deathbed, right? So meaning he wants the gift to be given over b'mavet when he dies. That's how it works. If someone is on his deathbed and says, I want to give everything away to Reuven, then the people that hear that will write it down, that we heard this person say on his deathbed that he wants to give everything away, b'mavet. As soon as he dies, a second after, everything will be given to Reuven. That's if it just says b'mavet. If it just says b'chayim, then that means he wants to be given now, while he's alive. And even if he's on his deathbed, but he says, I want it to be given b'chayim while I'm alive, well, then that will be the same as a gift of a healthy person. But now he writes both words, b'chayim u'b'mavet. So which one does he mean? Rav Amar harehi kematanat shechib mera, u'Shmuel Amar harehi kematanat bari. So Rav says we take the words of b'mavet, that's the words we take seriously, and this is the same as a gift on a deathbed. This makes a practical difference because if he gets better, and in fact it was a gift of a deathbed gift, then if he gets better, he can take it back because he gave everything away, and so that means it was on his deathbed, he gave everything away. It's evident that he only wanted to give it away because he was going to die and he didn't need it. But if he gets better, then he can take it back. Whereas Shemuel says, no, we follow the words of Chaim. We'll see in a second what he does with the other. Each rabbi does with the other word, and we consider it as if it's the gift of a healthy person, and therefore it's a final gift. It cannot be retracted. So let's explain. Rava Amar harehi kimatanat shechib mera. Medichti b'mavet achar mita ka'amar le. V'adichti b'chayim siman be'alma dechayeh. Rav says that using this double language, we assume that it is in fact the gift of a shechiv mera, and therefore cannot be retracted, even if he gets better. How do we know? Because it says b'mavet. That means after he dies, he wants the gift to go. So why did he write b'chayim? That was just as a good omen. It's kind of morbid to have to write down, I want to give this, whatever, he said it on his deathbed, and then they wrote down what he said. It's kind of depressing for him to say, oh, when I die, you get this. He wants to have some hope. Maybe he'll get better. So he'll say, whether in life or in death. So what he means really is it's not going to happen. It's going to happen in death. That's what he's actually saying. But he wants to put a positive spin and hold out the possibility that maybe he will be alive. And so therefore, legally, we take just the word b'mavet, and the word b'chayim is just for a good omen. U'Shmuel Amar harehi kimatanat bari medichtiv b'chayim. Shmuel says no, it's a gift of a live person. It goes right away because after all it says b'chayim mechayim ka'amar. So b'chayim, Shmuel says, is the same as mechayim. In life means from when I'm alive, during my life, meaning right now while he's alive. Now why did he write and in death? What he meant by that is forever. I'm giving you this gift from life, meaning from now, and forever. And even after I die, I want you to keep it forever. It's not a temporary gift that you can use it for 3 years. No, this is a forever gift. That's what b'mavet means. But the legally insignificant word is b'chayim, or mechayim would be the same thing. Now, in Nehar De'ah, they ruled that the halacha is like Rav. This is quite interesting because actually Rav was the rabbi in Surah, and Shemuel was the rabbi in Nehar De'ah. Nevertheless, I suppose a generation later, even in Nehar De'ah, they said that the halacha follows Rav, that we consider this to be a matanat shechiv mera, and therefore if the person gets better, they can reclaim the gift. Amar Rava, v'ikatab ba mechayim kana. Rava says, even according to Rav, who says that if you write b'chayim u'b'mavet, then we take the word u'b'mavet and we consider it matanat shechiv mera, and so you can get it back. However, even according to Rav, if you write instead of b'chayim, he wrote mechayim, from life, well then that means I want it to happen now from this point immediately, and therefore it's a final gift. Rava is saying, even according to Rav. Certainly, for according to Shemuel, it doesn't matter whether you say, but even if you say bachayim, we treat it like mechayim, and it means right now. So Rava is saying, even according to Rav, who says generally you'll be matanat shechiv mera if you say bachayim b'mavet, but if you say mechayim, then it's final sale and you can't get it back. Final gift. Amar amemar le'tilchata kivate de Rava. Amemar says, however, no, halacha is not like Rava, and in fact, according to Rav, whether you write bachayim or b'mavet or mechayim or b'mavet, it doesn't matter. We just see it as a good sign, a good omen. And really, it's a matanat shechiv mera. Amar le Rav Asher le'amemar pishita dehamri nehar de'ah hilcheta kevate de Rav. Rav Asher tells Amemar, isn't that obvious that the halacha is not like Rava? It's like the simple reading of Rav. You see, when we say halacha is like Rav, he makes no distinction between mechayim or bachayim. So why do you even have to say that halacha is not like Rava? Can't we just assume that if you say halacha is like Rav, then that means it's like Rav across the board? Isn't that obvious? And the answer is no, it's not obvious. Ma'odetema mechayim ode Rav kamash malan. I might have thought, if I didn't have a Memar statement, that Rav does make a distinction between bachayim and mechayim, and maybe only if you say bachayim or b'mavet, then it's a matanat shechiv mera and you can get it back. But if he says mechayim, maybe Rav would agree with Shemuel that mechayim is a stronger language and it's a final sale. And that's why Amemar has to come to teach us, not so. Halacha is not like Rava, but in fact, according to Rav, across the board, it's considered shechiv mera, whether it's bachayim or mechayim. And now we have a couple of stories. Haudat lekamed Rav Nachman linehar de'ah shedare lekamed Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba leshum tamya amar hachat Rad Shmuel hechi na'abid kevate de Rav. So there was a person who was in this exact predicament. He wrote he was on his deathbed, and he had written a document that said, I'm giving all my property away, bachayim ubamavet. But then he got better, and he wants to reclaim the gift that he gave away. He wants to take it back. So he came to Rav Nachman, who was in Nehar De'ah. We saw Rav Nachman was an expert judge in these types of monetary cases. And Rav Nachman says, I'm not ruling on this case. Rather, I want you to go to Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba in a different city, in Shum Tamya, and go ask him for a ruling. Now, why would Rav Nachman didn't know the answer? He did know the answer. However, he said, I don't want to give you a ruling because here, Nehar De'ah is the city of Shemuel. And it would be disrespectful to Shemuel to rule like Rav in this place. It's not clear if they're alive. They might, Shemuel and Rav might not have been alive anymore. Nevertheless, it's disrespectful. So it's very interesting. Even though the rabbis in Nehar De'ah, they're actually the ones that said halacha is like Rav. And so therefore halacha should be like Rav. So Rav Nachman wants to rule according to Rav, and that would be beneficial for this person who's coming to him, because the person wants to reclaim it. Rav says, yes, it's a matanat shechiv mera, even though you wrote both words, and you can get it back. But Rav Nachman says, I'm in Nehar De'ah, the place of Shemuel. I don't want to rule over here in the place of Shemuel against Shemuel. And even though the halacha is like Rav, it wouldn't be respectful. And therefore he says, I'm not going to give you a ruling here. Go to this city, Shum Tamya, and Rabbi Yirmiyah over there, he will give you a ruling according to Rav. And so that was very nice of Rav Nachman, both to give a benefit to this litigant who will be able to get his money back, but also to be respectful that this is the place of Shemuel. And now another story. You have a woman who wrote also when she was on her deathbed. She must have written mechayim ubamavet, so that in between language. And she came to Rava for adjudication. Rava followed his own opinion. Rava says, if you write mechayim, then it's a final gift, and you cannot take it back. So that's what he ruled for her. So sorry, it's a final gift. You wrote mechayim or bamavet, you cannot get it back. And she did not want to accept this ruling against her, and she kept bothering Rava. She kept coming back and saying, hey, but isn't halacha like Rav? And she knew her stuff apparently, and she kept bothering him to change his ruling. Amar le Rav Papa bere de Rav Hanan Safre. So Rava told Rav Papa, his scribe, who was the son of Rav Hanan, he told his scribe, go write the following document for her. Zil ketobla uchtoba, and write in the document, socher alehen o mata'an. Go write this phrase. Now, these words are from a Mishnah in Masechet Baba Metzia that have nothing to do with the case at hand of this woman who wrote a matana shechib mera and wrote this language mechayim ubamavet. So the words have nothing to do with it. What do these words mean? This Mishnah is talking about a case where someone hires laborers to do something that has to be done on that day. All right, they have to go and pick these vegetables on that day because if you wait till tomorrow, they're all going to get ruined. So a guy hires day laborers and he tells them $20 an hour. Okay, they all agree and they come. And now, after an hour, they walk off the job and they leave him hanging. So for him, this is going to be a huge loss. So what can he do? The Mishnah says he can trick them. He can tell them, listen, come back, I'll pay you anything, I'll pay you $100 an hour. Okay, they come back. And then they do the work. He only has to pay them $20 an hour, the original agreement. He does not actually have to pay them $100 an hour because really, they're at fault. They had no right to just walk off the job and leave him hanging with something that if he delayed, it would cause him a huge loss. That's what the Mishnah was talking about. So Rava said, go write that in the document. Now, why did he do that? He wanted to get this lady off his back. And so she kept pressing him, saying, no, change your mind, your ruling is wrong, it's not the halacha. And so he told his scribe, write something. He figured that she wouldn't know what's written in it. And he's giving her a document, says, okay, fine, here. And she would think that Ravat actually changed his mind, and then she would be happy and she would go on her way, she'd go back home. Now, if she actually took this document to a court to say, okay, here's my document, look, here's a ruling from Rava, and he said I can reclaim my gift. So the judges in that court would read it and they would understand right away what was going on. Right? They would say, okay, this has nothing to do with your case. Instead, Rava wrote this because it's a Mishnah about deceiving people. And really, Rava chose this Mishnah because Rava himself was deceiving this woman. And so he wrote a halacha about the permission to deceive people when they're doing something that's very annoying. And so that's what Rava wrote, just so she would go away. However, this woman was too smart and she didn't fall for this ruse. And so she said a curse to the rabbi. Amra litaba arbe at oye kamat ayet li. She said, hope your ship sinks. You're deceiving me. She saw right through his ruse and she cursed him. Now, a curse, even from a commoner, is a terrible thing, and because you're always worried, maybe this will come true. And she actually seems to be somewhat learned, this woman. And so she realized that you tricked me by giving me this document. I hope your ship sinks. So now they're worried that this curse is going to come true. Amshinu lemaneh de Rava b'maya v'afilu achi la ifrak mitibah. So Rava had his clothing immersed in water. He hoped that the curse would be fulfilled by this symbolic drowning, not of him himself, but just that his water would be drowned, and then that would be the power of the curse would go away. But even that was not enough, and in fact, Rava's ship did sink. I don't know if he died, maybe he was saved, but still bad enough that his ship sank because of this. So this is a very, very interesting story on a number of levels. First, you see Rava followed his own ruling, even though it was against the majority that ruled otherwise. And you have this woman who was herself learned enough to know what the halacha is supposed to be, according to others, and to see through the ruse. Interesting how Rava is trying to get her off her back, but I think ultimately the lesson is that Rava should have been more respectful in his treatment of her, and because he tried to use a ruse like this to send her away, he ended up getting punished. So a really amazing story. We now come to the next Mishnah. Lo kataba shechiv mera. Hu omer shechiv mera hayiti. Vehen omerim bari hayita. Tzarich lavi re'aya shechiv mera haya. Dibre Rabbi Meir. We have a document come before the judges here, and it says that this guy wants to give all of his property away to Reuven. But it doesn't say in the document that he wrote this on his deathbed. So we're not sure if he actually wrote it on his deathbed, And if so, when he gets better, he can get it back. Or if he wrote it when he was healthy, which, if so, is a final gift and he cannot get it back. So the guy claims, yes, I wrote this on the deathbed. I know it doesn't say in the document, but I am telling you that I wrote that on my deathbed. I gave everything away to Reuven, but now I got better, and therefore I'm reclaiming my gift. I want it back. However, the recipients of this of the gift, Reuven and whoever else he gave it to, say, no, you were healthy when you wrote this document, and you gave everything away, but still you were healthy. And the gift of a healthy person cannot be retracted. So what's the ruling? We have machloket about this. According to Rabbi Meir, this guy will have to bring proof that he was sick. Look, right now, he's healthy. It didn't say in the document that he was sick on his deathbed, and so therefore, from everything we know, it looks like he is healthy, he was healthy, and therefore it's a final gift, unless the guy who wrote the document, or had the document written for him, can prove otherwise. Hachamim disagree, and they say the burden of proof is on the one who wants to extract property. And right now, the property is still with the gift giver. And so it would be the recipients that would have to prove that he was not on his deathbed when he gave that gift and when he had that document written. Okay, now we have a story. Hahu matanta dava kataba kad hava kesir verame be'arse vela kataba umigo mar'eh ipatar lebet olame. We have a deed of a gift, and it says in it that I wrote this while I was sick and lying in bed. Good. So now it's clear that he wrote this as a shechiv merah. However, the following line was not written in the document, and this is a line that usually people would put in, but it was not here. And it would say further in the document, umigo mar'eh, and from his sickness he left to the eternal home, meaning he never got better. He wrote this document while he was sick. This is people testifying that we were there while he was on his deathbed. He said, I want to give all my property to Reuven. And he never got better after that. He died from that sickness. Why would that be important to write? Well, if you write that in, then it's clear that he gave it on his deathbed. He never got better. And since he never got better, he never had the possibility of retracting it. So therefore, this would be good for the recipient, and if he wrote these words in it, then for sure the recipient of the gift would keep it. He says, listen, he never got better, so there was no way that he retracted. However, in this case, the complication is that these words were not written. So it does say, unlike the Mishnah, it does say here that he wrote the document. He said, I want to give everything away, and told them to write that down. He did give away everything while he was a shechiv merah. Okay, good. We've established that. However, maybe he got better. So the heirs of the gift giver say, it's true he wrote this. He said he gave you everything when he was a shechiv merah, but the heirs claim he got better in between, and he reclaimed the gift when he was better, and then he died later. Therefore, we, the heirs of this dead guy, we should get everything. Whereas the gift recipient, whose name is written in the document, says no, he never got better, and he never reclaimed it. And the fact that it doesn't say these words, so this makes it ambiguous. So what are we going to do? Amar Rabbah, hare met v'hare kibro mochiach alav. Rabbah says, look, right now he's dead, and his grave proves that it's most likely he died from that very sickness. And this was just a basic assumption. We know that he was on his deathbed when he said, I want to give everything away. And now look, the next data point we have is his grave, so he definitely died. So why should we assume that he got better in between and then died? It's most likely that he died from that very sickness, and therefore the gift recipient, Reuven, he has the rightful claim, and he takes everything, and the heirs heirs do not get anything. That's Rabba's opinion. Amar le'Abaye, Hashta uma sefina sheruban le'abed, notenid alahem chumre chayim vechumre metim. Cholin, sherob cholin lechayim, lo kol sheken. Abaye says, I disagree with this logic and with this probability statement. Look at, in the case of a ship that sinks. Interestingly, the previous sugya was about a ship sinking, Rava's own ship sinking. And so here we have a follow-up using a ship sinking as an analogy. If we know some guy was on a ship and the ship sank, and let's say this guy was married. Let's say also he's a kohen, and since he's a kohen while he's alive, his wife can eat terumah. If he dies, then she cannot eat terumah. And now we know the ship sinks, but we didn't find his body, so we don't know if he drowned and died, or maybe he was able to hold on to a log and somehow he swam for safety, and maybe he's living somewhere but is not in communication. So what do we do with this person? We have to be stringent and assuming he's alive, and stringent assuming he's dead. And we have to be stringent both ways. So if he has a wife at home, we cannot allow her to get remarried because maybe she's still married to this guy. On the other hand, she cannot eat terumah because maybe her kohen husband is dead. And now she cannot eat terumah. So you see, in a case of a ship sinking, where most people don't make it, most people perish when a ship sinks. You have a few survivors, but most people aren't going to make it. And yet we say you have to be machmir for both things. So then, if someone is sick, most people who are sick get better, hopefully, and therefore, if most people get sick, get better, then all the more so we should take into account the possibility that this guy got better. And therefore, Rabbi, I disagree. Just because he's dead now doesn't mean he got better in between. There's a lot of things that could have happened in between. And if someone is in a situation, a ship sinking, we say, well, maybe he's alive. Even in that case, we say maybe he's alive, and we ruin her life. She can't get married. But maybe he is. So in this case, where it's actually more likely than not that he got better after he was on his deathbed, we're talking about someone who's sick. He's very sick. Okay, but he writes his will just in case. But it's more likely that, in fact, that he got better in between. So we should assume that, in fact, he got better. And if he got better, then he would reclaim everything. And therefore, the heirs have the right to take everything, and not the gift recipient, unless the gift recipient can prove that he never got better. And so Abaye disagrees with Rabbah. Amar Rav Huna bere de Rav Yoshua. Keman nazlaha shema'ata de Rabbah. So now Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, asks, this statement that Rabbah said that if someone is dead now and he was on his deathbed sometime earlier, we assume he never recovered. Whose opinion is he following? And the answer is Rabbi Natan, the opinion of Rabbi Natan in the following Baraita. The Tanya, mi mosi miyad mi, hu mosi midehen belo re'aya, vehen en mosin miyado ela bir'iya, divrei Rabbi Yaakov. This Baraita is talking about the same case as the Mishnah, where you have a deed that says this guy gave everything away. The recipient that's named in the deed says he wrote this while he was healthy, and therefore it's a final gift and I'm taking it. The guy, the gift giver, says, I wrote that while I was on my deathbed, and then now I got better. See, I'm very good now, and therefore I am taking it back. So who can extract the property from whom? According to Rabbi Yaakov, he, the gift giver, can take it from the gift recipients without any proof, and they cannot take it from him unless they have proof. So it sounds like we put it in the whoever is established, whoever has it currently in his hands, like Chachamim said in the Mishnah, and therefore we keep it in his hands, right? That was Chachamim said, and so since currently it's the property is in his hands, he says, listen, I'm keeping it, and I say that I wrote it when I was on my deathbed, and now I'm better, so I'm taking it back from myself. If you want it, you have to prove that I gave it to you while I was healthy. That's Rabbi Yaakov. However, Rabbi Natan Omer, Im barihu alav lahabir ayah shaya shechib mera. Im shechib merahu alav lahabir ayah shebari haya. Rabbi Natan says, if he is currently healthy, then we should assume that he was healthy beforehand. In other words, Rabbi Natan says, take whatever he is now, and that's the status quo, and you assume the status quo also backwards. So if he's healthy now, we assume that he was healthy at the time that he wrote it, in which case you would have to, the property would go to the recipients of the gift, unless the gift giver could prove that at the time that he wrote it, he was in fact sick. But if right now he is on his deathbed, then we can assume that with the status quo that he has now, we also extend backwards and assume that he was on his deathbed also when he wrote it, in which case he can say, no, I want it, I'm going to take it back. And it would be up to the gift recipients to prove that, no, he gave this beforehand while he was healthy. So Rabbi Natan says we look at the current status quo, we extend it backwards. Well, that's exactly what Rabbah said. He said, look, the guy is dead right now. And because we see his grave. And therefore, we can assume that he never got better. He was sick since the time that he was a Shechiv Merah and wrote this document. So we take the status quo and we extend it backwards, and therefore, since he never got better, so then in that case the gift recipient gets it because he never got better to have a chance to retract what he gave. Amar Rabbi Elazar ultum'a kemahaloket ditnan bik'a bimot hachama reshut ha'echid l'shabbat ureshut harabim letum'a bimot hageshamim reshut ha'echid lekan ulekan. Rabbi Elazar says the machloket between Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Natan parallels the machloket that they say regarding the laws of Tum'ah. The Mishnah is dealing with the status of a field. Is it considered Reshut HaYachid or Reshut HaRabim? Generally, something is Reshut HaYachid if it's owned by a certain person and it's all enclosed and it's not a place of traffic, a lot of traffic. Good, it's Reshut HaYachid. And Reshut HaRabim is something that will be an open area where there's a lot of traffic. But this is something that's kind of in between because, let's say it's an enclosed field owned by one person, but there are times of the year when lots of people walk through it. That's in the summer when it's all empty, there's nothing growing on it, so lots of people walk through. But then in the winter, where there's vegetation growing, then people do not walk through it. So what are we going to consider this? Now, it depends on for which halacha you're talking about. If it's for Hilchot Shabbat, all year round, this is considered B'reshut HaYachid. The farmer, the guy who owns it, he can carry within his own courtyard. It's an enclosed courtyard, and he owns the whole thing, so he can carry in it. That's true. No, it doesn't matter, summer or winter. It doesn't matter if people are walking through. It's still considered Reshut HaYachid for Shabbat. The question is, what about regarding Tum'ah? If someone has Safek Tum'ah, he's not sure if he came into contact with this Tameh item, walked under something that was Tameh in this area. He's not sure. So the halacha is that if it's a Reshut HaYachid, we're machmir and assume that he did come into contact with it, he's tameh. If it's Reshut HaRabim, then we're lenient. Partly because we learned this from Sotah, but also partly because when you're in the public domain, it's so hard to know what exactly is going on. Everybody will be tameh all the time. Reshut HaYachid, you can be more careful. So in Reshut HaRabim, we assume that he did come into contact and he is tameh. So this halacha depends on how many people are walking through. Doesn't depend on whether it's fenced in and who owns it or anything like that. And therefore, the Mishnah teaches a field in the summertime when there's lots of people walking through, it's considered Reshut HaYachid for Shabbat. A person could carry, but Reshut HaRabim for Tum'ah because lots of people are walking through. So therefore, if he has a safek, whether he came into contact with Tum'ah, we have to be machmir. However, b'mot hageshamim in the winter time when many people are not walking through, it's considered Reshut HaYachid for everything, both for Shabbat and for the laws of Tum'ah. That's all the Mishnah says. Now we're dealing with a case of someone is on the verge in between. Let's say sometime late in the spring, like after Pesach, someone walked through and now he's not sure and he has safek whether he touched something tameh in that field. Did he touch it or not? So now he comes to ask, listen, I don't know on that very day that I went through, I'm not sure if that was part of the rainy season, in which case status, that would be the Reshut HaYachid, and that would be Tameh. Or maybe it's into the summer season, and therefore lots of people walking through, if it's a summer, and therefore Reshut HaRabim, and therefore I would be Tahor, and we're not sure. So that would be is subject to a machloket between Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Natan. Rabbi Yaakov says you maintain your prior status quo. In other words, if you were tahor when you walked in, before you walked into the field, then you remain tahor afterwards. And so we assume, because it's not for sure that this was during the rainy season. If it was definitely during the rainy season, okay, it's safek reshut hayachid. But now, maybe we're not even sure if it was a reshut hayachid, or maybe it was the winter, and therefore we'll follow the prior status quo of the person. If he was tameh, he continues to be tameh. However, according to Rabbi Natan, we say, well, when did you come to ask? Let's say he came a few days later when it was definitely summertime. So we say, right now, it's summertime, it's Reshut HaRabim. So, since you're coming right now, we look at the status quo right now and we extend it backwards and say, since right now it's summertime, therefore, when you went through, we will also assume, he's not sure exactly, so we also assume that it was during summertime. And during summertime it's Reshut HaRabim, and we are lenient, and therefore you are tahor. In this case, if you came in tahor, there'll be no machloket. The machloket would be the other way around if it was sometime in the fall. And so, if you would follow Rabbi Yaakov, if he was tahor coming in, he's tahor coming out. Whereas, according to Rabbi Natan, if he comes to ask a few days later and it's already definitely the rainy season, we say now it's the rainy season, and therefore we should assume that also beforehand when you walked in, it was the rainy season, in which case it's a Reshut HaYachid, and you'd be Tameh. And so you see that the machloket regarding Tumah and Tahara will be the same principle as the machloket that we saw above. Do you follow the status quo of the person, whatever he is now, or in the case of the gift, of who has the money, the property in his possession. So we follow Hamosim Chavero Lavaraya, or in other words, the prior presumption of ownership, or the prior presumption of his Tumah or Tahara status. That would be Rabbi Yaakov. And Rabbi Natan says we look at the current status quo and we extend it backwards. So it's kind of like an opposite chazakah. Amar Rava, lo shanu ela shelo avru alav yemot hageshamim, aval avru alav yemot hageshamim, reshut hayachid lechan ulechan. Rava says that this parallel is not actually so exact, because this Mishnah only applies when the rain season has not yet passed. In other words, if you're still in the summer, if you were in the summer, in which case everything is Reshut HaRabim, and you could be lenient, and then you move into the winter when begin the rainy season, that's where the laws of this Mishnah applies. So yes, over there you'll have a machloket between Rabbi Natan and Rabbi Yaakov. However, on the other side of the seasons, if the winter had passed, then we have to assume that it's a Reshut HaYachid for both cases, because during the winter, few people went there. It was considered a Reshut HaYachid, and so we're gonna continue that status quo even forwards, and assume that anything that went through it is going to be tameh. And so in that case, everybody would agree, both Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Natan would say that this field is considered Reshut HaYachid, both for Shabbat and also for the laws of Tum'ah, because it's coming after the rainy seasons. Like once it's closed in and people are not walking there, that's it. It gets the status of the Reshut HaYachid. So Rava is disagreeing with at least half of the argument that the machlokets, the two machalokot are parallel and would apply in both cases. The machloket would not apply, at least not if you're talking about someone who walked through in between, sometime during Nisan, between the winter and the summer seasons. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.